Welcome back. Newsflash, politicians lie. But why? And what impact does it have on the body politic? Bill Adair has been searching for that answer for many years, and he founded the fact-checking website Politifact in 2007. He's the author of the recent book, Beyond the Big Lie, The Epidemic of Political Lying, Why Republicans Do It More, and How It Could Burn Down Our Democracy. And he'll be in conversation at this weekend's Printers Row Lit Fest down in Printers Row in the South Loop. And Bill Adair joins us now. Bill, great to have you here. So you went around to politicians, you went around to pundits and staffers, and you asked them a very novel question. Why do you guys lie so much? So what did they tell you?
Well, this was funny. I'd been a long-time political reporter. I'd covered Congress, covered the White House, covered local politics in Florida, and I had never asked this question. And even as the founder of Politifact, I hadn't ever done this. And so I talked to all these people, and I got some interesting answers. You know, ultimately, the answers were about helping themselves in one way or another. And in some cases, it was personal defense. They were accused of something. The person they worked for was accused of something, and so they had to deny something. That would have been a case like Bill Clinton. You know, no, I didn't do it. In other cases, it was a calculation to lie because it would help them score points with their base. And that was the case with a lot of the campaign lies, lying about an opponent, lying in a campaign ad. I have a chapter where I dissect one campaign ad and I look at one campaign's decision to lie, what went into it, the internal fight that they went through deciding whether to lie. And basically my favorite quote from Stu Stevens, a Republican consultant, was, hey, this is not a white paper, you know, and they just made the decision, we're going to do it. So I really enjoy doing this. It's a book that's a collection of stories about lying. It's not a big academic book. It's case studies about lying.
The anatomy of a lie, right there in your book. So as journalists, you know, it's very difficult to determine if someone's lying or if they simply don't know and they misstated something or it's a half-truth. So what is the answer here to combat this epidemic of lying, as you call it in politics?
Well, you know, I think we're at a pretty low point in American politics. There's so much lying going on. I think politicians have concluded, particularly in a time when things are so polarized, they can lie pretty freely and not worry that it's going to upset their base. And so that is a difficult time because people get their news, or many people do, in these echo chambers from partisan sources that don't challenge elected officials the way they should. So what are the solutions? So at the end of the book, I offer a few. One that I think is kind of novel is the idea of a pledge, that politicians could take a pledge, very simple, that they wouldn't lie. And this would be similar to something that Republicans do, a pledge that they wouldn't raise taxes. And I think politicians should challenge each other to take that pledge. It's something that really both parties should embrace, and then challenge each other to follow. And this is something that the Americans for Tax Reform has sort of branded and Republicans support. Why not support this idea?
And it's not just... I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
It's not just politicians, though. We see with social media that lies go far and wide, from influencers and from folks maybe trying to score political points. Is there any way to put the finger into that dike now that it's overflowing?
Well, social media is really difficult to slow down, but I do think you can push back against it, and I think we've seen that with some of the things that some platforms have done, using even automation when a false claim is circulating, to respond to it with a counterclaim that says, hey, that's not true, here's a link on why it is true. and use the power of automation to fight back against that. The problem is when you have someone like Elon Musk controlling a giant platform like X, that's not going to happen. In the case of Facebook and Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, for as much as he talks about freedom of speech, he isn't going to entertain something like that at scale the way it needs to be done. So I don't have a lot of hope about social media. But I think at the root of the issue is the politicians. I think if we can get the politicians to set the example, that's who we really have power over through our democracy.
All right, Bill Adair, we'll continue this conversation Saturday at the Printers Row Lit Fest, where folks can catch you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Paris.